Good day. Good day. Another beautiful day here in Nova Scotia, wherever you are. I hope that it's also a good day there. It's time for our devotional, and so I'm just going to. Well, it's actually a little early, I guess today. It's 10 to 1, so a little earlier than usual. But we're going to get into it today, and I just pray that it'll be useful to you. Want to remind you, in case somebody happens to be clicking on this video for the first in this series, it's just a verse by verse walk through the book of Proverbs in the Bible, and just looking at wisdom and discovering what we can glean out of it. And so I share my thoughts from the verse, and they're just meant to help spur your thinking along as you look at the verse and try and figure it out for yourself. But the book of Proverbs is a book of wisdom. It's a wonderful book, and it leads us to wisdom. So anyways, today's verse is chapter 1, verse 32. I'm going to read it, and reading from the New American Standard Bible. It says, "For the waywardness of the naive will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them." Now, this verse is talking about waywardness and complacency, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But it's not merely talking about that. That's not like the whole subject, that is just talking about a person who is wayward or complacent. That's in the context of this speech in the last half of the chapter, where it's talking about the person who chooses wisdom versus the person who chooses to not listen to wisdom. And one of the reasons is because of their waywardness or their complacency, the fact that they've been wayward about choosing wisdom and complacent about choosing wisdom, it's going to destroy their lives. Now, other places in the Proverbs, it comes back to talk about things like laziness and how bad that is, and that's specifically about laziness. But in this case, it's applied to that context of in our choice regarding wisdom. And you could say it this way. Wisdom is a lifestyle. It is not merely a choice of a specific situation, right? So it's kind of like wisdom is not knowing whether or not to cross the crosswalk at this moment. Wisdom is knowing when the right moments to cross the crosswalk are, right? So you can come to an intersection with lights, and the lights are red and green. A person could be in that moment looking at the road and saying, I think this moment is a safe moment to cross. Well, there might be some element of wisdom to it, but that's not what the point of the wisdom of Proverbs is. It's not saying knowing that. It's knowing what you should do to make that determination. How do I know when I look at the street and the cars and the lights when the right moment to do that is? So that's the wisdom that Proverbs is trying to teach us. It's more about a way of life than the particulars of the life along the way. And so the foolish who reject learning that, they're complacent or wayward about learning how to live a good lifestyle, it destroys their life. They end up crossing the street at the wrong time, they get hit by a car, and they're done. Right? That's the idea. Now, it's not obviously talking about cars and stuff. That's my example. But the idea is that wisdom is a lifestyle. The book of Proverbs is about choosing and learning how to live a wise lifestyle, a wise way of life, and not merely the particulars of the individual pieces of your life. So that's the point of the verse. So I'm going to go through 4 questions here, and we'll just find ways to explore the idea a little further. And so the first question is, what does a wise lifestyle look like? And to sort of sum that up, I guess I'll suggest this idea. A person who has learned a wise lifestyle is a person who has come to want certain things, right? Whereas the foolish person does not want these things, right? They're complacent. They're wayward on these things. But the wise person wants certain things. First of all, they want to know wisdom. They want to find that lifestyle. That's actually part of the lifestyle, is the wanting to find the lifestyle. It's probably one of the first steps, I suppose. They want to be a moral person. They want to do what's right. Morality is talking about doing what's right, right? So they want to be a person who loves to do what's right. A lot of people in life, they live for other purposes. They want to do what's fun, or they want to do what's easy, or whatever. And right is way down the list. Well, a person who learns a lifestyle of wanting to do the right thing, to be a moral person, it's part of the lifestyle of wisdom. And a person who wants to learn wisdom. So they want to know it, they want to be moral, they want to learn it, they recognize their need, and they want to grow in it. A person who chooses a wise lifestyle is a person who wants to understand, not just simply do. They don't just want to be told, do this, do that. They don't want to be automatons. They want to understand so they can learn to apply. And that's the last one. They want to apply their wisdom to life, not just know it, but do it. And then kind of the wanting of those things is the lifestyle of wisdom that the book of Proverbs really is talking all about. And it gives us all kinds of examples of how to apply it and so on. But that's here in chapter 1, a foundational concept. And I know we've been repeating this as we go through each verse. We've been repeating this from various ways. We haven't been saying the exact same thing every day, but we've been repeating the idea because the value of repeating this and getting it into our minds that chapter 1 of Proverbs is laying a foundation for the whole book. It's saying, listen, wisdom is a choice. Wisdom is calling to you. Wisdom isn't automatic. You have to respond to wisdom. And there's disaster for failing to do so, and so on and so forth. And repeating repeatedly, the verses of this first chapter are coming back to this idea of wanting to grow in wisdom, to make it a lifestyle, not merely a thing you did once or twice or whatever. So question 2, well, what does a foolish lifestyle look like? And I guess it's kind of the opposite of that. It's not the opposite in saying I don't want those things. It's basically kind of the opposite in the fact that I have no want for those things. I don't care, right? That's why I use the word complacent, right? They don't care about wisdom and what's right, what's the right thing to do, and growing in knowledge and growing. They just want to kind of live life following their nose. What's next? Just going to do this, or just following their desires or whatever. And they don't really care about the outcomes or whether it's the right thing to do, whether it affects somebody good or bad. And that's kind of the hallmarks of a foolish lifestyle, is a lack of caring. I think it's one of the reasons in the New Testament where God talks about in Jesus, he gives a letter to the church and he says, you've lost your passion, right? You're neither hot or cold anymore, right? He says you haven't got a desire this way or that way. You're just kind of complacent. You're just you don't care. He uses the word lukewarm. And he says, I'll spew you out of my mouth. And, I don't want, so it's like if I eat something that's just kind of like, it's kind of lukewarm, and I spit that out. So God uses this image just to say, that he doesn't want us in our life to be people who are just complacent and apathetic about things. Like having a passion, hot and cold is better. Like even if you're passionately wrong, it's somehow better than this complacency, because complacency generally doesn't grow. So even if you're passionately wrong, well, at least maybe you can be changed and we can move you to passionately correct. But in our life, a fool is the one who just sort of doesn't care, right? Just whatever. Well, that's not really a good place to be. So that's a foolish lifestyle. Question 3, can a wise lifestyle and a moral lifestyle be separate? Now, I've made the point throughout this chapter that morality and wisdom go hand in hand. They go together. And so I'm going to say here again today that really can't be separated. Now, that's my opinion. You can look through this, and as we go through Proverbs, I think you're going to find more and more evidence throughout the book of how they actually really are connected. And the wisdom God's given us through the Bible seems to be indicating that there's an absolute connection between morality and wisdom. But for now, I'll simply say it as my opinion, and also say, I really believe that they are connected. And I think that's even kind of implied here in the first chapter. You can't really have a wise lifestyle if you choose to have an immoral lifestyle. They just don't go together. And you can't really have a moral lifestyle if you neglect wisdom, right? There's a need for wisdom so that you can discern what's the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do, which is moral statements. And so they really kind of go together. Wisdom without morality, you might call that like shrewdness or cleverness or craftiness, as the Bible uses the term crafty. You can have a form of wisdom in that you can figure out how to get a certain outcome out of something, but it won't be really that wisdom, the godly wisdom we're talking about, that really is something you can count on in life. It's just simply shrewdness. And so in the same way, morality without wisdom, well, that can end up being kind of a legalism or a self-righteousness. And so you have a lot of morality, but no wisdom. And that can be actually pretty dangerous, because your morality isn't necessarily correct. And it's not wise. And saying the other way, your wisdom without morality, well, how do you know it's actual wisdom, correctness, and not just, well, you were shrewd enough to get some sort of outcome out of a scenario, but not really anything more than that. So they really aren't separable. They kind of have to go together. And ultimately, you can say, well, a person who's immoral obviously isn't wise, because at the end of the age, you have to stand before God and give an account for your life, and eternity counts on your morality. So you might want to consider that in your wisdom. Question 4. What is the link between foolishness and waywardness and complacency? So why is this linked together? And I think the idea here would be that waywardness and complacency, as the verse said, or apathy, they all refer to a failure to act. A wise person hears wisdom and acts. They act on it. That's why it's a lifestyle, because it's a way of living, not a way of not living. If you don't ever act on it, well, then what's the difference between that and death? Just dead things don't act either. But the ancient world, a lot of the idea of what it meant to be alive was the idea of being able to act, to do something. So they could refer to even like a river as living water, because it seemed active. It was moving and doing something. In our modern world, we think a little differently about what makes something alive. But that was kind of their thinking in the ancient world, is that you're alive because you're able to act. And so a lifestyle is a set of principles by which you lived by. If you don't care, then you're not acting. And so this is the whole idea of action. It's all in this verse, the idea of action. The fool doesn't act, they don't learn, they don't grow, they don't do. Even if they hear wisdom, they don't accept it. So there's never any action that comes out of it. And almost the entire book of Proverbs, we're going to find proverb after proverb as we go through them. They're all about doing something, and or doing something by choosing not to do something else. And we'll see that as we go through it over the time that we're in this book. But that's what it is. So it's not about the circumstance. It's not about crossing at the crosswalk at the right time. It's about knowing how to cross the crosswalk at the right time. And that's what we want to choose. So the challenge for you today is make lifestyle choices. As we study the Proverbs together and you hear these things, always be moving yourself to the question of, okay, what can I do about this in my life? So how can I make a lifestyle out of this thing? What can I apply it to? And you'll find the Proverbs being much more valuable to you. So you're not just called to agree with them. You're called to learn them and apply them and do them. And we want to. And that's the lifestyle of wisdom. Where's the fool? Whatever. I'll get to it eventually, or who cares? Doesn't really matter. And well, that's foolishness, right? All right. God bless each person that watched this video today. I pray that you will bless their life specifically today and help us to be wise and choose the lifestyle of wisdom in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, God willing, I'll see you tomorrow around 1 o'clock. And we're going to look at verse 33, last verse in chapter 1. And I'm going to answer the question of why did it change the subject of who we're talking about. In the first part, wisdom is saying you, if you. The second part, wisdom is saying they. And then the last verse says, but he who listens. And it changes again. And I'm going to just talk a little bit about that tomorrow, and about how that leads into the next chapter, which is about how we can feel secure in this world through wisdom. Anyway, God bless you. See you tomorrow.